Weight systems. Weight systems are a great way to basically have a Balisong account for the wide variety of tastes that flippers have. Basically, flippers want different things out of different knives, and one of those biggest things that kind of change between flipper to flipper is the preference not only in weight but balance. Obviously, a 5.0 ounce knife is going to flip very differently from a knife that's like 3.2, but a lot of things that I personally care about is balance. Now, first things first, what exactly is balance? Essentially, a balance of a knife is how much does the blade and the handle counterweigh each other. Depending on preference, I prefer neutral. I find that neutral makes things easier to fan. Some people prefer handle bias, which lets rollovers feel more kind of like floaty in a sense that it just kind of lets itself take control, and it feels a lot more effortless. There's no wrong weight preference. There's just a matter of what do you prefer. And because balisong makers are, well, balisongs in general just really niche as a hobby and as a, it's an expensive skill toy. Being able to account for a wide variety of people's preferences is a pretty financially sound decision in order to have a wider market. So, what do different weight systems look like? Well, first things first, let's talk about the different kinds of balisongs because it's different for different kinds. There's channel, sandwich, and chandwich balisongs. Channel balisongs, for the most part, don't really have too many options, but we will get into the starting to change system that has been invented. A typical one is basically just a screw in the bottom. This is the Kanto Origin, but also in the Prisma Pro and the Slift T and the regular Prisma. Channel balisongs a lot of times are simply counterweighted by a screw and a sex bolt. In Zippy's store, you can get these light ones that I got because I find that with no screws, it's a little blade bias, and with the standard screws that it comes with, it's a little handle bias, and I prefer neutral. So I ended up getting these lightweights because I found that it was a happy medium. But there are also different ways of doing things, and I'll look into, let's say, the Koenig. The Koenig is interesting because at the bottom of the handles are different holes with different length screws, and so you can unscrew and basically have no screws in there, or just have different lengths. So there's some that are like this thick and some that are this thick, and it can affect things actually pretty significantly. So while the Koenig I feel like is maybe more neutral with no weights, I actually do like how it feels with a little bit of weight in its rear. Also, one thing is that like a knife can be weighted neutrally, but also sometimes people prefer to have extra ass weight or butt weight or end weight, and that just helps also with rollovers and momentum. Um, there are also, in general, sandwich balisongs that have different types of spacers. So as you can see, these spacers are all kind of custom. Let's look first at the EX11. The EX11, basically any sandwich knife needs to have a spacer. Sandwich consists of two slabs, everything that's the blade and the pivots area, and then at the end, a spacer. In this case, instead of the stock titanium spacers, I just have a barrel spacer in here. And depending on my knife, I have different amounts of barrels, or I just have different things. So my Basilisk over here has 3 barrels, and that is a nice balance that whoever sold it to me already had it, and I actually really like this balance. The replicant, there are many different kinds. Replicants come in all sorts of different styles. These are both channel, faux channel spacers, so they fill all the way up. But this one, I believe, is either titanium or aluminum. I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm so sorry. And this one is G10, and so that actually provides a different balance. Likewise, oh god, I'm so sad about this one. I got it tuned up, and now it taps even worse. Likewise, I had a balisong that I had in mind, and then I forgot which one I was looking for. Oh, the Cygnus. The Cygnus, I also have a faux channel. I actually kind of like faux channel, as you can tell. But also in here, they have different weights that you can insert in the channel, the spacer itself. And so, depending on adding weight, you can add some modularity instead of just having different sets of spacers. So with just the carbon fiber faux channel spacers, it's lighter than the titanium, but then you can add different weights. And then you also have these floating spacers where you have different number of brass pins, but if you wanted to remove some, it would still function without them all. The Gaboon also is interesting because there is a spacer, but I have like the fastener pins, and you don't need both, but I like to have, I guess it is nope, it's two fastener pins, one on each side, as well as the actual sex bolt and screw. And so instead of having the titanium weight, I just have the fasteners in place, and it gives me a balance. The Gaboon is also interesting because it has a bunch of these slots for small weight distribution in the middle, but that one's a lot more nitty gritty, and it's frankly kind of a lot to fuck around with because you have to disassemble it every time. Speaking of which, the Seraph. The Seraph is a Chanwich design in which it is two separate pieces that look like a full channel. So instead of a sandwich where you can see all the way through, as you can see, because it is just two slabs, the Chanwich is two separate pieces, but it looks like a full channel, such as an actual channel knife. But the fact that this can come apart means that you can actually have different weight systems in here. In this case, I don't really want to take it apart because it's kind of annoying, but there is a slot in here that you can put in different weights. You can have no weights, which actually still feels pretty good, and you can have there's two different brass weights. There's hollow brass weights and solid brass weights. So you can imagine the solid one's much heavier, and the hollow ones still feel really nice. Maybe just a little handle bias, but still feels really good. And then Zippy made custom plastic ones that have tungsten balls that you can add or remove. And I find that with the Marin blade and the plastic weights with no tungsten balls, that's my preference. This is a good weight system. However, in order to do it, you would have to disassemble it basically every time. It's not just popping these out. You either do the lazy way where you just kind of wrench it by pulling it out this way, which could apply pressure down here on the pivots, especially with stainless steel washers that can be a little dubious. So it's in your best interest to, if you want to do it safely and for the longevity of your knife, disassemble both parts and then remove one of the slabs. But that's a lot of work, you know? Of course, I always forget a knife. Actually, I don't need to. I have the Phobos, and then I also have the Ion. Alright, so the Ion and the Phobos have a similar weight design, in which case, in here, there are pinned slots. The Phobos just uses the same hardware as their Zen pins, which is a really inexpensive and efficient way of having different weight systems while because you're already going to be using Zen pins, and just having more Zen pins per, it's a lot less expensive than probably having brass weights. The Ion does have brass pins that you can insert. I'm actually going to talk to Frankenforge about this because these actually are having a hard time fitting. But here are the pins that come with, and so that's another system. Likewise, though, you still have to kind of spread it out, give it a little split. What I love is this design from the Titanium Antarctic. This one I actually will disassemble real quick, because what's nice about this is that while it is a spacer, the spacer itself is really easy to adjust. You just pop out the spacer and then you can slot in different pins. I do believe these are brass pins as well. But once again, if you are a maker, I think that the Zen pin system is a really good, efficient way. And thankfully, because of the Antarctic, it just slots in pretty easily. There is a groove that it just, as you can see, just slots in right here. So it's not terrible in order to pop it back in. And that is a really, really great weight system that I think is honestly somewhat underutilized. Now, I don't have it with me anymore, but the Nakiri has a weight system that is a channel balisong where you can have screws in the bottom to hold it in place. But not only are you having screws here, there's actually a divot here where you can have a separate metal weight. Unfortunately, Nakiri only has two weights, and both of them are handle bias and even more handle bias. And it is designed so that no weights is blade bias. Blade bias is, I agree with Blake in that having a no weight in the handles be blade bias is nice because then you can fine tune things. Unfortunately, there just aren't enough options considering that there's only two. And the fact that I flipped one that was really neutral, it was only because that my friend who lent it to me, Cream Soda, reached out to his friend, who made custom plastic 3D printed weights that actually fit really nicely. So unfortunately, a weight system is only as good as the flexibility that it provides, which wasn't a lot. I see that also the new machine-wise knives, the Totori and the Sasori, have similar weight systems to that, I believe. At least the Sasori is the channel aluminum, the Totori is the sandwich titanium, but they do seem to have a similar weight system with the Nikiri and each other, but I do assume it to have more flexibility. And likewise, Jimpy has created a new knife called the Machine. It's Mashin, and it also similarly seems to have a channel with a removable weight. And that's nice because, again, you don't have to disassemble the entire knife. You just need to remove the sex bolt that holds it in place and then pop it out and swap in a new one. There's even also other weights, such as the Zippy Cycloid. The Zippy Cycloid, I can just straight up remove the spacers at the end. It is also a channel. This one is, it's a channel knife. It looks like it's sandwich, but it is a channel knife. And in here are actually highly customizable weights. You can have up to 3 tungsten discs and I think 3 tungsten balls, one disc weighing 3 balls essentially. And you just pop it out, and when you're done, you pop it back in. I will say though, unfortunately, as much as I adore this design, it is still it's really hard to fuck around with the different layouts in that like the discs are just really hard to pop out. But you know what? Uncle Zippy does a great job. Why am I struggling so hard to put this back in? It shouldn't be hard. I'm just being a dingus. There we go. So yeah, Uncle Zippy had a great, very flexible design. Not to mention that you are able to remove weights in the blade. Zippy also has some other weight inserts for certain Balisongs, such as the Kraken and the Glider Arctic and Antarctic, where you can also theoretically add tungsten balls to the blade inserts. In this case, the Cycloid is default made by that because this whole thing is made by Zippy. And so you can add and subtract weight both in the spacers and the blade for a perfect configuration. That said, it is plastic and it's already quite light, so it's hard to do that. And as much as I love the Gaboon, and I think that the albeit overkill weight system is really interesting. One, it's just annoying to fuck around with because of having to, again, disassemble the entire knife in order to add and subtract various tiny screws. And two, because it's so light already, it's kind of hard to just be like, I'm going to make this even lighter. It's really, really light. There are other Balisongs, again, such as the Rep, where Zippy has made custom spacers, and the spacers can include different tungsten balls, similar to the Cycloid, and then you can have your sandwich knife be as balanced as you want it to be. But that is, I believe, kind of the majority of the weight systems, unless you want to count latches, but I think for the most part people remove latches because it's an unbalanced weight in that it only adds to the bite side. The Chimera latch is a little special because it can retract, but most people will remove their latches if they want to flip knives that are, well, uneven, essentially. Like the 87, for example, is a Balisong that actually I think flips quite well. And as much as I love the magnetic latch design, it just makes it so wobbly. So yeah, weight systems are really cool. I have seen several sandwich knives. I do believe that a sandwich knife just kind of inherently has different weights. Hello, sir. Because you just have a spacer, and then people can make custom spacers. And if you provide that, again, the machine is, oh no, don't you dare step on the space bar. The machine is also like, oh yeah, you can put a barrel spacer instead of like a weight. So that's cool, or like a bushing, I guess. But yeah, I've seen some Chanwich designs, and I think especially if it's a Chanwich, you are going to have the ability to make a weight system inherent to it. I have not actually disassembled the Chanwich Balisongs that don't have weights. But if it doesn't have a weight system, I really, really think that it's a bad idea because channel width is already an amount of like precision required to like mill and have all the slabs fit together. It's really nice. It has the benefits of both channel and sandwich, and you might as well have a weight system in, because like even if it is annoying to disassemble and reassemble every time, it's still helpful to have that option to be like, I want to mess around and try different balances. Because again, I remember talking to Notion Flips about the serve, and I've talked to some of the LDY folks about the turbid, which wasn't actually their design. I have not talked to Sauri. I don't know if they speak English, but essentially, it to me it honestly feels like such a waste. Like the turbid, it was way too handle biased for me, and I couldn't adjust the weight. And while Notion Flip said everyone that he's given it to loves it, it's also a relatively small pool of just Polish flippers. And yeah, there are a lot of really good flippers in Poland, but it's also still like not everyone has the same preferences as you. You can make a knife that is for you, and that's totally fine. In fact, I recommend that you do. Trying to make a knife to appease everyone is, in a sense, going to appease no one. But if you make a knife that is for you and it has optional weight systems, you just increase the number of people who are able to appreciate your product. Because not only, like, even if this had a fixed weight, I would still love it. But the fact that I can have it have less weight or more weight, it just means that I can build this exactly to how I want, and everyone has it slightly differently. So it's really, really good to have that option. So for one, if you are making Balisongs, please consider having a weight option. It is possible to do it with a channel knife, albeit it is a bit more work and a lot harder, and you do have to provide weights. Secondly, if you have a weight system, it has to be able to be tunable. The Balisongs that have like zippy weight options are really nice because that is really tunable, but it's also, for the most part, a third-party extension unless it is the bandage stitch, which does actually have a really nice weight system because it is just zippy spacers with like up to like 5 tungsten balls each. That's really adjustable. It's like dead neutral with none, and I wish that it was like slightly blade bias so that I could add weight to give it more ass weight, but like for the most part, it's really wonderful. Some have brass as a metal for the weights because brass is a pretty heavy metal. But also, I think steel Zen pins are a fine way to have it be inexpensive, relatively speaking, instead, because then you would need to have a brass machining process or get brass pins. It's just a already hardware that you're gonna have. And also just be aware of what kind of weights you're providing, because the Nakiri only has steel weights, and they're both too handle biased for my preference, which is heartbreaking. So if you do have options, make sure that your options can go a long enough way. The Gaboon has a metal spacer with optional pins, so you can have no pins and just the weight inside, or you could have no weight, the spacer and both pins, and that's actually really nice because I managed to tune basically all of these knives I have here. Unfortunately you can't see them all, but like all of these knives I've managed to tune essentially to like my preferences, as well as some over there. A lot of them don't have weight systems, but that doesn't make them any less good. It's just a matter of having weight systems allows for more flexibility to the flipper, the customer, in order to make the knife what you want. Not all weight systems are good. Not all weight systems are easy, and not all weight systems are inexpensive. So it's obviously a matter of cost analysis benefit. But personally, sandwich knife more or less benefits from just having a weight system, and if you're able to accompany your spacers with some additional like fasteners, like these, like the Gaboon has, that's a really great way of doing it. And if you this one, this one is honestly kind of neutral, so like only removing it would only make it more blade bias. And for the record, some people prefer mild blade bias, but there is such a thing as way too much blade bias, and there's such a thing as way too much handle bias. Being able to provide people with, it's like neutral is sort of a spectrum, and some people like things a little more heavy, and some people like things a little lighter. So being able to basically provide your customers with different varieties of experiences, it's just a good thing. So if you're gonna make a high-end knife, you might as well give enough people a reason to spend the money, because like I love the serve. I don't currently have it on me. It is currently being tuned, but like unfortunately it is only got one weight system. It's got no weight system, so it's only got one fixed weight. And I think it would have been really nice if other people could have fucked around with that. Not everything has to be as crazy as the cycloid. So thanks again. I guess let me know in the comments what your favorite weight system is. I think out of all of these, the Arctic, the titanium Antarctic, I think is my favorite, just because of the ease of use, as well as like its simplicity. It is both easy to disassemble without having to disassemble the entire knife. It's easy to add and subtract weights, and very fast to be able to try different things, opposed to disassembling the entire knife, reassembling the entire knife, not liking that, configuration, disassembling it, changing, adding, or removing a weight. It becomes a whole process. I do also really like the Koenig system. I'm going to try a Pacific soon, so I'll let you know how that feels. And yeah, I think also having a spacer be able to pop out and change things. Mostly this is the best one, but I'm excited to see more from the new Machine-Wise platform, the Totori and Sasori, as well as Jimpy's new knife. I don't know if I'll get one. I'd like to try one at some point. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comment. Like, subscribe, click the bell notifications, and consider checking out the coffee in the description. I am trying to reach 500 subscribers, and yeah, I don't know. I think there's so many fun different things about weight systems. So let me know in the comments what your favorite is and what you think, and if something is good or underrated or could be better, or like what are your thoughts. I don't know. Bye.